Are you tired of lugging around heavy, bulky tree stands, whether you're using a climber or a hang-on, and would prefer to hunt lighter and more mobile? If you said yes, then you need to check out the Tethered Mantis Saddle and Predator platform. For me, this setup has done a couple things for me over the past year and a half. I've definitely been more mobile, lighter, and when you get into those situations where maybe the wind switches on you or whatever, and in years past you didn't want to pull all your gear just because you didn't want to move it, didn't want to make additional noise and things of that nature, this kind of solved all those problems for me. And I'm able to kind of tear down quickly, make a move if I need to make a move, and get set up without losing a whole lot of hunting time. The other thing I do a lot more of with this is actually I'll still hunt my way through, or just kind of go into an area where I'd like to check out, scout with all my stuff on my back. It's super light, so I don't really even notice it, and I hunt to where I'm going, or still hunt through to where I'm ultimately going to set up, which is a great benefit, has been a great benefit to me so far this year. If you're interested in all these things, then you need to head over to tetherednation.com, check out all their information related to saddle hunting, and release your inner tree ninja. First thing I do in the morning before a hunt is, of course, I have to have my morning coffee, and I'm sure most of you out there probably feel the same. Make sure you're filling your mug with Skull Brew coffee, as it is the only coffee company that is both 2% for conservation certified and, of course, donates 10% of their profits to conservation organizations who are helping us to secure the future of our wild places. So head to skullbrewcoffee.com and choose between 3 kilo roasts of coffee, and know that you are supporting conservation with every sip. All right, if you listen to this podcast for any length of time, you guys know that I am good friends with all the guys over at Exodus. And I want to give you a quick heads up that you should be checking out some of their content if you haven't already. They have a podcast out called Trail Cam Radio, and they release new episodes every Tuesday. So the day before you listen to this one, you could be listening to that one as well. They've done some deep dives with some great guests. You'll recognize some of these names as Jeff Sturgis, Dan Enfalt, and the Hunting Public. And they also jump into and talk to some less-known hunters who consistently are getting it done many times on public land. If you prefer to watch podcasts, if you're looking for some video content, they have a YouTube channel as well, and that is packed, of course, with great videos and interviews. One of the most popular ones they did is a candid interview with John Eberhardt, and if you know anything about John, you always get the straight dope from him. And for specifically my PA listeners, they just recently posted a public land big woods interview with Steve Shirk, which I consumed, and it is pretty awesome. This dude's killing hammers and getting on giant deer in Pennsylvania, so it's absolutely a must listen. So if you're looking for more whitetail content, especially here during the course of the season, you just can't get enough, be sure to head over to their podcast, Trail Cam Radio, and their YouTube channel, Exodus Trail Cameras, and drop them a subscription or review and let them know that Truth from the Stand sent you. If you're also in the market for a trail camera, over the last 4 years, of course, Exodus has consistently showed they build quality trail cameras and that flat out just work. Of course, the best trail camera warranty, period. Every single camera is backed by a 5-year warranty and even comes with a theft and damage coverage. That's right, 5 years, literally half a decade, you'll be covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because the cameras are built to last. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you are listening to episode number 147. Today I'm bringing you the Iowa Rut Log number 4, so stay tuned. All right. What is going on out there? Hope everyone is doing well. Happy Wednesday to you. I think this is coming out on Wednesday. I'm starting to lose track of my days while I'm on this trip. All I know is that I have quite a few days left to try to wrap a tag around an Iowa hammer. So if you listened to yesterday's episode, you know that I had an encounter, I guess you could call it, kind of, with a large mammal, a large cervid, and the plan was to go into today, and or what day would that be? It would have been Tuesday, to go in the morning and try to hunt that deer in the bed that I found him in. He was in a CRP field in this little hedgerow. I kind of talked about it yesterday. I thought I had a chance to go back and try to kill him this morning if I set up on the ground. So that's what I did. I hiked in early this morning. Got into his bedding area and put a hunt on the ground. Unfortunately, daybreak came and there was he was no-show Jones. He didn't show up. Well, first thing in the morning. I thought he'd be getting back to bed early was what I was anticipating. And so when that didn't happen, I did a little rattling sequence, etc., and ended up rattling in a young deer, just a small buck came in, kind of checking things out, and moved along his merry way. So Hammer did not show up, but there's many deer in Iowa. I'm not kind of setting my heart on any one deer and spending time unnecessarily kind of dwelling on one particular animal that I have zero history with. I'm kind of I'll take I guess a line from my buddy Josh Profit and basically say that I'm hunting like a coyote. I'm hunting for opportunity, and he didn't show up. So then I decided to kind of push forward and see if I could make my opportunity elsewhere. So I think I got up. Well, when I walked in, I packed everything in. So I had sticks with me. I had my saddle on, which is another just a killer aspect of the saddle. It's like I was able to kind of walk in with the saddle on, and I could hunt from the ground and then make a move midday and then go hunt from a tree, and scout because it's light. I'm not carrying a huge stand around. So what I did was I did ultimately want to make it to that next set of timber because it's connected to some ag, and I wanted to get up toward that ag just to kind of check out and see what that actually looked like. It looked like it was potentially good whenever I was looking at the map online or on my app. And so I wanted to kind of put boots on the ground and check it out. And I also wanted to check out more of that general area. So probably around 10 o'clock, I got up and started walking, headed over to that line of timber. I didn't really like what was right in front of me, so then I started headed up toward the ag. And as I got up there, it got a little bit better. But I found 5 scrapes that were all open, but it was on this little access road that's on the public. It's the weirdest thing because it's the only part on the anywhere that I've been this point that's actually mowed and somewhat manicured. And there were 5 scrapes along that and like a rub here and there. So being that it was so close to ag, I really didn't want to spend a hunt on that because I felt like it was probably going to be mostly nighttime activity. And so what I ended up doing instead of going back out the way I came in, I decided to kind of take a large loop around and check out the entire thing. I found a couple more scrapes, but they were all kind of in similar areas. And a lot of this area, it's like CRP with like these scrubby little trees kind of placed everywhere. So it's kind of hard to hunt in general unless you hunt the timber line looking out into the CRP, which I could do. There is one place that intrigued me. I didn't go into it today because I had the complete wrong wind. I had a west wind today, which was great for my ground setup. But the area, if I was sitting on the ground where I was hunting this morning, and I have a west wind blowing into my face, and if I guess directly to the left of me, there was a little like brushy area, gnarly kind of area that butted up right up against the timber line. And if I were going to check anything out, that would probably be where I would look because it's this really brushy area at the bottom of this ridge, and then there's a power line that goes up over this ridge. That seems to be pretty thick too, and I imagine it's probably a lot of bedding throughout that. And I know the brushy stuff down below me. I'm sure it's a lot of bedding down there. And that would be one place, at some point I wouldn't mind throwing a hunt out, but I have a few other places that I know a little bit about, that I know the caliber of deer that are in those particular areas that I'm a little bit more intrigued by. So I ended up wrapping that scout up, and I think it was around 12 o'clock, I guess. I pulled out of there and I decided to head over to an area close to where I hunted the first night, or the first day, and that general area, John has some history with, and just from talking to him, and from what I had seen on the trail cameras that we have in there, that's the spot that I've kind of generally stayed out of the past couple of days as the weather got a little warmer, because I'm going to plan to do some all day sits in that general location, probably starting tomorrow. Just in talking to John, he knows, just from watching it for the past couple years, you know, between the 6th and the 10th, he's like, he has a Magnum buck that walks through there, a Magnum Iowa buck that walks through there every year between the 6th and the 10th. And so it's one of those things that if you just go in and you put your time in that area on those dates, you're probably going to see a really quality deer walk through there. To quote John, he said if he would have sat there any one of the 3 years that he's lived here and did all day sits between the 6th and the 10th, he would have killed his biggest buck ever. any one of those years. So I'm going to put some time in at that location beginning tomorrow. So there's a spot that we scouted that's a little further south of that area. So you could have the same deer. I just didn't want to burn out, a particular spot, but I wanted to be in the same general area. So it's a little further of a hike down, to the very bottom of this horse trail that kind of goes the whole way to the bottom. There's a hay field that's down there, and I'm not sure what's in it. It's private, so I can't get over and to kind of check it out. But I remember whenever John and I walked through that in March when we were scouting, he kind of took me through, we went shed hunting, we found a shed, and he showed me like a couple of the setups, that he's liked in the past, and some areas I probably want to focus on, when I was getting ready, this fall. And then we kind of hiked out the rest of that bottom and went over onto this ridge. It was a little further to the west. So I made my way down there, and I really didn't have a plan as to where I was going to set up. But I just knew the general area, and I kind of got down to the bottom of that horse trail, kind of cut into the timber. I knew it was in the evening, so I kind of wanted to stay, 100 yards or so off the corner of that field, just because I knew if I was going to see any movement, it was probably going to be doe movement that was coming from above me, kind of making their way to that field. And then if there are does moving through, there'd be a chance there might be a buck, or two following by or following close behind. So that was really what my game plan was. And got in there, set up. I think I walked away from my truck around 1:00. It took me, I think, 45-ish minutes to get in there and then locate a tree and ultimately get up in the tree. Got all settled in and didn't see any deer, zero movement, which wasn't entirely shocking. It's a little warm today, and I thought, which is exactly why I kind of went there. I was like, if I'm going to spend a hunt somewhere, I don't want to burn out. I don't want to be in a spot that I feel is primed to pop. And so that's why I went to this location. But that being said, right around 3:45, I just happened to hear a stick break, look behind me, and I see tines going through the brush. At that moment, I wasn't sure if it was a shooter or not. I had a hard time being able to tell or see what exactly it was. So I just immediately grabbed my bow, and it was looking like it was going to come off to my right side. It's coming from behind me, so I'm getting set up to potentially take a shot to my right. And then I peek back behind me again, and it's moving to my left. So then I set up to potentially take a shot from the left, back to the right. You get the picture. He ended up coming to my left, and that entire time, it's like I could see his body, and he looked like he was probably a 3.5-year-old. But I never got a clean look at his rack. Like from what I could tell at that moment, he was borderline for me, borderline shooter, and a tank of a body. And he did give me one shot opportunity at about 17 yards, but by the time he got there, I wasn't able to spin back around to my left to ultimately set up for the shot, and I still hadn't determined whether or not I wanted to shoot him. Everything kind of happened pretty quickly. So he got behind some brush. He got downwind of me. He didn't blow out of there. He just got, stiff-legged. Like you could tell he didn't like something. He just kind of walked off up on top of the ridge and was gone. Cool encounter. Big deer, good looking animal. Just wasn't sure in terms of, rack size, what he was. So some time goes by, and it was about 4:30, and that happened about 3:45, 3:30, 3:45, something like that. And 4:30, I look at my, my phone, and it's like 4:30. So I say to myself, I'm going to go ahead and do one last rattling sequence here at 4:30. Sunset's around 5:00. That way, rattle, hang out for the next half hour, 45 minutes, and then around 5:15, it's like I can't see my pins anymore at that point. So then start pulling my stuff and get out of the tree, right? So hit the rattling sequence, and then I'm sitting waiting, and I started hearing some noise up on the ridge. I didn't think it was the deer that I had just seen not too long ago, because I figured, he got spooky and walked off. And then I saw a flicker in the brush and looked like a deer, put the binos on it, couldn't see it. It was behind brush. It was too thick at that point. I couldn't see anything. And then I heard walking again, which clearly wasn't a squirrel. It was that deliberate kind of cadence that a deer has that you recognize when there's a deer that's nearby. Then finally he popped out into the open, and I could see it was actually a deer. It was a buck. I wasn't sure if it was the same buck or not, and he was behind brush, and I still couldn't tell how big he was. All I knew is he had many tines, just not sure of the size. So he walks down the side of the ridge a little bit, and he just stops again. And every time he would stop, like he would get hung up behind brush to where I could see his entire body and I could see his tines, but I couldn't see his head in like the full rack. And so I gave him a grunt to try to get him to commit and come in. He stood there, so I snort wheezed at him, and he got all jacked up, ripped up a tree, ripped up some brush, thrashing his head around, and then started walking toward me. And I was like, sweet, this is going to happen. At this point, he was still kind of in the brush to where I still couldn't see him, but he was making his way towards me. He stopped again. I gave him another snort wheeze. He ripped up some more brush and a tree, and then he committed and was on his way in. And I finally got a clean look at him. He's a 9-point. He was probably borderline 125, 130, something like that. It's the way I kind of, my perspective is that he was about the same size as the deer that I shot in Ohio 2 years ago. And he ended up coming down and stopping at like 25 yards. There was a tree between me and him, and I just kind of stopped messing with him at that point because I recognized I wasn't going to shoot him. And then he got a little spooky because he was like, "Hey, I heard some tine tickling down here. I heard deer fighting. I heard someone snort wheezing and grunting at me, and I get down here and there's no deer." So he got a little spooky and stiff-legged his way out and walked away. And that was pretty much my evening hunt, which was super cool because I've never been able to, I've rattled in a buck every day since I've been here. And that was the first time I've ever snort wheezed a deer into bow range, which was super cool. And he was a nice looking buck. Most anywhere else, it's like I would have been glad to put an arrow in him. But just wasn't what I was looking for out here. And then John, of course, isn't on this episode. He's at home. I'm doing this from my cabin. But just to give you a quick update of what he had going on today, he had a great encounter with a 145, 150 class deer that he has some history with. He let it pass as he's got one particular deer in mind that he's trying to kill, which is pretty cool. So he grunted him in, called him in from a couple hundred yards away. Actually, he saw him first thing in the morning. Hit the antlers, give him a little tickle. He didn't like it. Headed to the edge of the timber. But he gave him a little grunt, and then he walked into the timber, and that was about it. And then a little while later, he ended up popping back out, and then John threw a call at him and got him to commit and come into bow range to where he could then finally see which buck exactly that it was. It's a 3.5-year-old that he has a little history with. That's probably 145, 150, which would be a great deer if he makes it through this year. Now I think that's kind of John's plan, is to let that deer hopefully live to see another year and put on some more inches. So that is the update from Iowa. The plan for tomorrow is I'm headed into the location that I hunted the first day that I was here, where we have a couple cameras deployed. We have a couple of deer on camera from October through, just from a couple of days ago. There is one particular deer that's calling that place home, so to speak. He's a pretty clean 8, and I would say he's probably he's probably 150 inches. So for an 8-point, he's a very, very large deer. I'm not holding out for him. I'll say it again. I'm hunting kind of like a coyote for opportunity. And the first good deer I see that kind of meets my criteria or gets my blood pumping will meet the business end of a day 6 arrow. So I'm hoping that I release one tomorrow. If not, then we'll be back after it the day after that. But that is the update from Iowa. I'm going to try to stay on schedule with these and keep these coming out. I hope you guys are digging them. I always like doing them and kind of recapping the day and kind of reliving what happened during the course of the day. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you do those 2 things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.